right, Julie. We're at that time of the day again where we watch you weave your magic wand and kind of take us through this whirlwind that we've been on today. I'm gonna hand over to you, and then I'll join you a little bit later on, if that's okay.
Yeah, that's okay. Give me a couple of minutes and I'll run through kind of what's happened and then jump in whenever, because I love the cross conversation is awesome.
All right, see you in a bit.
All right, thank you. All right, let's get started, everyone. First of all, I just need a hands up that you guys can see my screen, because this is the biggest part for me. Looks like you can. So yeah, welcome to what a show. I can't believe it's already 7 o'clock at night here. I'm located just outside of Toronto, and I feel myself stuck to the seat right now because I've been sitting here so long, but what a day. And as you can see, so much great content from all of our speakers. So what I'm going to do is just quickly highlight who we heard from today. And then the stuff here on the left-hand side is a little bit of a takeaway summary that I'd love to talk to Daniel about. Once I've finished going through all the speakers, just to give everybody that highlight recap. So we started the day with Ben Irwin, and he opened up our show at 11 o'clock Eastern time this morning and talked about a few different things, announcing some of the speakers that we were having coming in, and announcing the third polys that we'll talk about that at the end of this segment, because we've got the entire WebXR team will be coming back out to have a quick chat with us. We then had Daniel. He actually opened up the show and talked about a whole bunch of things where rubber meets the road. And we talked a little bit about all the different things that were going to be the elements of the quote unquote metaverse, or M word, as Terry Schuessler called it today. We talked about OKRs, the objectives, key results, things that would create and produce an amazing experience. And of course, the return on experience. Next, we had John Gress come in, and this was a great conversation about constructing the metaverse. And there was so many key pieces in here, and I've lifted out, some of the important things. And I was also taking a bit of feed from our YouTube channel, where people were throwing comments out when the question of, is content queen and experience is king? Somebody pointed out that it should be, we are the people. John Gress and Daniel talked about the experiential age, that, combining 2D into 3D, there's a huge convergence happening. Everything's becoming metaversive, and starting with the end in mind. Experience of anchors are the core of who you are. I thought that was really key, the key importance here. And it takes a lot of unlearning to get where you're going. So forgive me here, my mouse seems to be a little bit jittery, but we'll get through it. Next, we had Brian Cardell from Igalia come in and talk about the new WebXR browser. And I took a few images. We're actually going to be posting some of these images from my sense making into the Discord channel, so that we can share some of this knowledge, and anybody who's listening or would like these takeaways, we'll have them here for you. So he talked about the multi-engine architecture, and guaranteeing web principles, and what it's going to take to build out this new ecosystem. He finished off with his 2023 goals, finishing off the multi-backend architecture and getting on millions of users. We do have an upcoming event November 3rd. I hope I got the date right. So Daniel can correct me when he comes back in, because we'll announce it again. But we've got an upcoming event that will go through the WebVic browser a little bit more. We then moved on to standardizing the web-based metaverse. We had Neil Trevitt and Kai Ninomiya on, and lots of talk there. Web for the win was one of my big takeaways. This one was very technical, but a lot of lessons in there just on where we are with deploying the web GPU and WebXI, the delivery of what's going to happen between USDZ and GLTF. And it was great to hear that the conversations of how these two file formats will start to work together, and that there is a working group that is working to figure that out. So a lot of great work there. The Metaverse Standards Forum is the biggest piece that they now have over, they hit 1,900 members. And, it really does come back to that collaborative. It takes a community to build everything out. We then had Terry Schuessler join us with his group planning for WebXR augmented reality in the headset. A lot of really key takeaways in there about story living, meeting creators in the space. Layers was another word that I kept hearing, actually. Layers, it takes layers and layers. And I commented that on my takeaway. That's a repeat word. They also talked about, giving language new points of view. And I thought that was interesting. There's a couple of people that talked about language today and the definition of language and how language is going to change. They also talked a lot about the pass-through, which is still so in such early days after MetaConnect, announced on Tuesday about that. So they did touch a little bit on that. Next, we had Alan Smithson with building the immersive creation tools with Ashley Crowder, Jonathan Hale, and Felix Hurst. And they talked about everything, if you don't have 3D soon, what are you doing? And just making sure that companies are staying with the trends that are happening. They talked about solutions about, creating chains that need to get shorter to be able to produce content and shortening iteration cycles. So this was all about, bringing 3D into production processes and building out web apps for the future. We then moved into Evo, crafting new realities, world building and generative AI with David Romero and Timothy Porter. This was a great conversation about, we talked about NERFs, a lot of learning for myself there, NERF being a neural radiance field and how to use, pre-training machine algorithms into saving efficiencies and, decreasing costs in the whole process altogether. There was discussion about workflows and how AI can build out things like texture changes and inversion and all sorts of things, data mining yourself. As I said, today was a learning experience for me too. So I'm spitting this out like I know what I'm talking about, but I just for that clarification point. Next, we had rigging avatars with Dulce Berga, Andrew McDonald, Christine Heller, and Jin. That was a really cool conversation, talking about, bringing physical into 3D, using recognizable public figures to produce these avatars. Talked a lot about creating drag and drop features for creators to be able to create things for avatars. And then they talked about modifying avatars on the fly, but one of the things that I'll bring in my takeovers with Daniel was that we need to be careful that we don't fall into the cookie cutter model of avatars to lose our identity agency when we're in these spaces. And I think that's a really important piece. And I've noted that in the takeaways. Next, we had Money in the Metaverse with Elizabeth Strickler, Ileana Oris-Valiente, Elizabeth Chase, and Christopher Choice. That was talking about the different rails of currency, crypto, fiat, what is next when it comes to the marketplace and these transactions that are happening. Elizabeth Chase also brought up that, the micropayments are starting to allow people or opening up accessibility to have people on the blockchain and being able to open up that possibility of transactions for everyone. There was a lot of really interesting things. Developing products on layer one was a big takeaway on that, just to get people going. And that when we're developing these experiences, the marketplace is really, it's transaction number 55, as Ileana said, way down the line of that user experience. And we need to think about what is that number 1 to 49 before we get to that marketplace. Next, we had independent makers, Juliana Lowe, Daniel Adams, Albright Enolia, Timmy Serkost, and Jenna Lambert. This was a great conversation just about the creator space and using 360 video, putting you in the moment, the commitment to accessibility, and also just there was a lot of talk about gaming. I think a lot of these people came from the gaming aspect and bringing their creativity to XR. Then we had Daniel coming in and interviewing Thomas Wellner, making magic with WebXR. And, that was all about gaining the medium of going somewhere, leveraging new strengths of a medium. The moment you interact, you break down that dependence, and feeling connected to a story is to feel agency. That was one of the big takeaways. I've noted that. I thought that was really interesting, is that once you hit that interactive point, you've actually hit on that empathy point. Hold on a second. We had a lot of content today. Next, we had Getting Creative for Good Cause with James Orego. And I personally teared up in this one. I'll be the first to admit it. I choked up. I thought this one was it was an amazing game changer in all this discussion of enterprise business, building, creating, and then we had this emotional piece where magic happens and helps loneliness and kids in hospitals and stuff like that. And I'm totally with Daniel in if there's ever a utility, helping loneliness and kids in difficult moments. I think that is super powerful. Next, we got serious with envisioning the future of social VR with Daniel again, and Lisa Marie Wurtzinger, Karen Malecki Sanchez, and Chris Madsen. And, we got right into conversations about the dark net, but we did talk about, what the common understanding about how to behave in the metaverse would be, and how users have control, where you spark moments, bringing cultures into the space. I thought that was really important. That was something Chris Madsen said, and I put that in my key takeaways, is that when you start to bring different cultures, it just becomes the norm. Next, we had advancing the ecosystem with Ben, Catherine Henry, Richard Gross, and Daniel Lundgren, and talking about advancing the hardware and taking that enterprise first approach, talking about the user and being able to own that experience with the user. It has to be worth it. So utility is so important. We called out DICE, which is a term basically curated by Jeremy Bailenson. DICE stands for dangerous, impossible, counterproductive, and expensive and rare. These are the best applications for virtual experiences. And then we also we had a quick shout out to Meta, just of being able to build out that ecosystem for us that we rely so much on today. Next, we had David Smith, the augmented conversation, and I picked up a few things from his presentation. One of them I thought was really impactful. You are defined more than anything by how you communicate. The metaverse will redefine what we are and what it means to be human. And I thought that was really impactful. Again, he talked a lot about language in his conversations, the language of music, the language of math, and communication, and how we'll apply those into portals and connect with each other. We then talked to Lucas Rosado with Daniel. This was a fun and enlightening conversation just on doing things. He had some great messages for us. So do things that you can't do anywhere else in this space. Be simple, and don't lose humanity with AI. I think there was some great messages that he also had, and how sci-fi is, and really has driven the worries of XR. So lots of good stuff there. Daniel then went into a conversation with Sean Mann about scaling WebXR with RP1. This was a discussion about RP1 and being able to make a space easy to build and easy for many people to have accessibility to be able to, open up that door for everyone. Karen Alexander then came in with democratizing WebXR with Rolando Masasabando and Damon Hernandez and Mark Steven Meadows. A really deep conversation on accessing the information, what the rights are, a right to should determine the quantity and the agency of who you are. So there was definitely some good conversations there. It's actually one of the ones that I think I'd like to go back and re-listen to, because it was really deep, and I felt like that conversation could have gone on a lot longer. So, and then lastly, we just had a conversation with Fulfilling WebXR's Potential with Hagai Goldfarb, Trent Clue de Castella, and Diego Marcos Segura, and Chuti Joy. They talked a little bit about just how WebXR is, is the future of everything Web3, and how there's so many possibilities, and it's evolving to give people agency in this space. So there's definitely a lot of things to discuss there. That's it, Daniel. From a high level, I'll go back into my takeaways so we can narrow in on some of these key messages. But, what a day.
What a day, Julie. And what a skill you have of doing this real time as we're talking about this, picking out salient points. It's a really nice way to reflect back on the day, because conversations come and go quite quickly. It's a really nice opportunity to reflect back, and I just want you to take a nice deep breath, because you covered that like in one fell swoop. So well done, Julie. Thank you for that.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And as I said, this is a journey for me as well. Right. I learned a lot, and we can pull out some of this stuff. The term I heard over and over again was standards over standards, standards. I think
that's one. Couple of threads that stayed with me was people, and it's about the people and about connecting. And it's a little bit a shame that the word connecting has a bit of a different aftertaste. It feels like Mark Zuckerberg on Facebook kind of co-opted that term, like we're all about connecting people, and you can argue the other way with that kind of social media, but it is about people. And I'll go back to one of the opening statements. For me, the best VR is the VR that makes me forget my headset.
Yeah.
When it's just about the experience, and often those experiences are either very good single user experiences, or because I'm with people that I care about, or with meaningful interactions. So yeah.
I also heard people need to care about why they're in there. So really driving to that, what is that end experience, what is that feeling that you want people to have when they're in your experience, so that you can start there. How are you going to target those emotions?
I remember talking to Lucas about that, and I brought up your term return on experience, and it triggered the thought of return on attention. And nowadays, really, as a consumer, what every company, every app, every website, every marketing company wants is your attention. So if that's what they value, that's what we have as a currency, our attention. Right? So then as consumers, we're paying with our attention. So really the question from a consumer point is, what do I get for giving you my attention? What's my return on my attention? That'll stay with me for a little bit, I think, from that concept.
Yeah, and I jotted that down. It has to be worth it, right? It has to be worth it for a user to be in that space. And, whether they're buying something or they're just experiencing something, it right. has to be worth it for the user to stay there and be there and come back.
Right. And it's got to make either our lives overall substantially better, or just got to make day-to-day life a bit easier or more pleasant or happier.
Yeah, that was
either in a big way or just...
Right.
Sorry, go on. Say again.
No, sorry, there was a delay there. I was just going to say there, even capturing or figuring out, building out efficiencies within our space. It's another piece of, getting there sooner or doing things quicker.
And a lot of talk about AI as well. And I'm not surprised. I think it's right. The auto generation of content, very, very exciting developments in that space. And I'll say it again, for me, this year has been the year of AI. It's the first year that I've paid attention to AI because it means something to me. My son Ziggy,
That's right.
he completed he does online school, and one of his teachers gave him an assignment, have to create a propaganda poster for the First World War, where they were studying history, and it was a bit of a project where they had to go and create something on their laptop. He just went to Midjourney. 5 minutes later, slapped the text on it, and he got recommendations for it.
Yeah.
It was hilarious. Right?
Yeah, absolutely, and I think maybe just finishing off with the one word that we also saw was consent. Building consent into experiences right now, so that people understand that they're, what are you tracking? What happens when that user interacts with something? Having that transparency as people are learning about this space is the best position to be in, to be able to have that trust being built with the user, or whether it's an employee or consumer.
That's very true. And that what I said about our currency as consumers being our attention, actually we have two currencies. We have our attention and we have our data. Right. And so we were quite rightly thanking Meta for all that heavy investment and really driving the ecosystem, but they're also getting something out of it. They're getting a lot of our data and attention from this. So it's not, that investment in the ecosystem is not free. We actually pay for it as well. So I have to keep that in mind.
That's right.
But having said that, Meta is easy to criticize. Meta is easy to bash. I don't partake in that. I see the value in what they're doing. So,
and really, they've kind of set a path forward of how we will roll this out. The excitement around mixed reality pass through. Even on Terry Schuessler's conversation, there's discussions of, what does that look like? What does the UI look like around, building with this pass through in VR headsets? There's teams that are now mobilizing to be able to do that. And it's amazing that a company like Meta has that influence on our industry. And whether, however you feel about Meta, they have laid the groundwork for everybody on our panels today on, what does development look like moving forward? Well, Meta releasing, and now we need to be ready to build for that. So, interesting
Absolutely.
times.
It is. And also in a sense, I like to believe that Meta is just doing their best, and really it's up to us. Like, we can criticize all we want, but really it's up to us to do better. They're just challenging us. The next company, do it better then, put more money in, build it better. And there are ways to do it better. I know there are. But
I think it's also about taking ownership of your own identity and your own agency and understanding. I can go back in a term, humanics, that I used. It was from the Joseph Fayun book of Robot Proof that I spoke about a couple of years ago. Understanding the technology that's taking place when you're interacting with it, being able to be social for one, understanding there's a computer and camera and maybe a headset that's transporting your images, but understanding the data collection that's happening at the same time. There's a trifecta there of humanics that we all need to own, and we can't blame other people for the way that it's being manipulated if the right user experience is put into place. And I think closing off with it's our responsibility as part of this industry to have that ethical design as a part of every single development that we do moving forward to ensure that those.
And a big part of that ethical design and responsibility is educating people, because it's ignorance that gets you, right? Mobile phones, we have ethical data and privacy dilemmas right from the outset. We still really haven't solved them, and we're still not really at a point where opting in and out is intuitive, or where you're aware necessarily. Now we're maybe starting to teach it in colleges. I know we had a librarian going around every class teaching about how to stay safe on social media and also check your settings. It was one of the most popular courses that we offer at college. Still so much work to be done.
Yeah.
But